after the 2023 season, the Mets were going to listen on Beatty and Vientos, which was why it was
Mhm.
interesting to me that then GM meeting is the first time we talked to David Stern as a beat, at least, because there was the formal press conference, but you get a little bit more, um, casual conversation access at the GM meetings. So that's why I thought it was very interesting that he brought up. I think Vientos is very useful because he's got a bat. So it was clear that the Mets they valued these two, but they just weren't sure of their potential at that point. And
Mhm.
that's still fair to say because they're young and they haven't necessarily put up multiple seasons with the same numbers. I do think that like there is a world that exists where you keep all four of them at the end of the week. Acuna can go back to AAA and play every day. He's got speed, sure, but so does Tyrone Taylor, and you can use him
Mhm.
late in games, late in the season. Is it best for Acuna's development if he's not hitting? They sent him back to AAA already once this year. That's not off the table for the rest of the season. They're going to do what they think is best for his development. Mauricio, I think, is definitely untouchable right now, but I don't think Vientos and Beatty have ever been untouchable.
Mhm.
Maybe not ever, but in the last 3-4 years, I don't think that they've been untouchable at any of those points. I think that the Mets have always been open to listening to, what other teams think, what other teams value, and they want to know how every team wants to know how they value their young talent. You have to know because that's advantageous to your front office. So I think that they've always been sort of, not eager to move them, not actively looking to move them.
Mhm.
Uh, but has the possibility existed? Sure, it's always existed. And, I think there's a few of us who heard the same thing that Martino heard this week. And how much validity there is to some of those things during trade deadline season, you never know. And the Mets are very good at preventing a lot of leaks. So it's David Stearns has said, nope, nobody's off the table
Mhm.
in terms of their top prospects and their young talent. He has said that nobody's off the table because he's going to keep the door open to something that he thinks is going to make the team better, but it's going to take a package to like probably blow him away to get some of those young talent. I think it's safe to say that they're gonna take guys like Broat and not really. They're definitely not looking to move any of their top prospects, but they're gonna listen. If Stearns is saying everyone's on the table, there's certain guys where you can say, okay, sure, what do you have? What's the best offer you can give for me? There's no harm in listening.
Mhm.
And if there's something that blows him away, he'll do it. But I don't think that the Mets are actively looking to get rid of or to trade. I shouldn't say get rid. I hate that term. These are actually humans at the end of the
Right.
day. And it's so funny it's a little dehumanizing when we talk about them as like trade capital and like,
Yeah.
this
Assets.
guy on the market. Yeah, assets. Like it just feels dehumanizing to me. I shouldn't say it's funny. It's just dehumanizing. But it is kind of funny. Around this time of year, I always have to stop myself when I'm writing and I'm like, let's maybe word this a bit differently because he's a human with a soul and family.
And emotions and feelings. Uh,
Exactly. So
yeah.
yeah.
There is something interesting, and this is a bit of an old reference at this point, but there's almost like a Duda Davis kind of thing going on with Vientos
Yeah.
and Beatty of like they're probably only going to keep one of them in the long term, whether that's this week or long term. They could keep both, I guess, depending on what happens with Alonso. But I don't know. I have a feeling that one of them probably won't be here for the long term. And you talk about like needing a big return to give up one of these guys, and maybe that's posturing, maybe that's actually how Stearns feels. Like he never really says what he means in public. Most good GMs don't,
Yeah.
except for like Brian Cashman, who will just be like, oh, we're going to trade everything for everybody. But it's why I don't really buy into these rumors of the Vientos for Luis Robert stuff. It just seems like I know Robert has a lot of potential. They're almost like similar players in that they're really good a year or two ago, but are having really bad years right now. That doesn't seem like the deal you give up Vientos for a guy who's like almost as equally boomer bust as he is. I think they would, in my opinion, I would think they would probably hang on to him if that was the kind of deal they could get for him.
Yeah, I'm inclined to say the same. I don't think for a rental of Luis Robert, we don't really know. He's been so inconsistent.
Mhm.
We I don't see them giving up a Vientos type for Luis Robert. The one thing I did notice about Luis Robert, looking at some of the numbers, was that he has a really high OPS against lefties, and the Mets definitely need somebody who can hit lefties. But Vientos is starting to come around on that again.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see it being Vientos for Luis Robert. I'm not sold on Stearns seems to really like value the what McNeil and Taylor bring in center field. I think there's definitely a question of, can Jeff McNeil play center field every day? He was a very good outfielder in college. He played all around the diamond in college, and he played a very difficult outfield at Long Beach State. I went to Long Beach State. I know how tricky that ballpark can be. There's a
Mm-hmm.
heavy marine layer. Balls tend to die, and you lose visibility when trying to track them. Plus, at the time Jeff was playing there, that was a cinder block outfield, so you couldn't run full speed into that
Yeah.
outfield. Every year there was a visiting
Jeez.
player who would run full speed into the outfield, like just instinctively. Every year there was a visiting player. The NCAA, I think, made them pad the outfield, and they brought in the fences because it's hard to hit there. But when Jeff was there, that was a really tough outfield that he had to navigate. And the Mets gave him some reps in center field when he was injured, or doing his rehab assignment earlier this season. So it's not like he came in blind. He's handled it very well. I'm not sold on David Stearns, upgrading in that position. I think he's going to look to see what they can get. I don't think he's going to say like, we don't need to upgrade center field. They're definitely looking into upgrading center field, but I think it's one of those things where he's going to have to. It's not necessary in his mind. It's not a priority.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, and I try not to overreact to some of his public quotes because again, it's like I'll wait to see what they actually do versus reacting to what somebody who's trying to negotiate publicly is saying. He's not going to tip his hands to these other teams and say what they're actually like willing to do or willing to give up.
Yeah.
But Stearns did talk a lot last week, and it's kind of been the vibe with a lot of the beat reporters and the national reporters that most of their interests seem to be around pitching right now, which is definitely a need. You saw on Monday night, the bullpen's still on most nights, like needs a lot of help. They could probably use another starter, especially if Clay Holmes is going to maybe get transitioned because his innings limit is coming up potentially. But I do feel like just hoping that the offense is going to be better than it has all year almost seems like a foolish thing. It reminds me a bit of 2022 where like that team was really good. That team was better than this one has been. But they still needed like a bat or two, and they really kind of cheaped out, and that was Billy Epler, and it kind of blew up in their face. And I just look at the numbers, they're a top 10 team in offensive WAR. They're top 10 in homers, but they're middle of the pack in runs. And a lot of that is runners in scoring position. They have been consistently bad at that since opening night when Soto struck out against Josh Hader. It really has never gotten better. And other than Alonso, there's not really any individuals who are even performing super well at this. I just think like, is it just going to get better because you're hoping that like the law of averages catches up? Because sometimes one whole season could be an outlier, and you might not get better at it just because more games passed. And it does feel like not addressing that at all would be a missed opportunity, and is banking on a lot of like young players or people who have underperformed this year just getting better just because. I'm not sure what your thoughts are about that. It's not an easy solution either, because it's like, okay, Alvarez is back, so you're probably not going to address catcher now because he looks pretty good, and McNeil's playing more in center, and that makes center field a little bit more wishy-washy than it was before. And third base, you're getting a little bit of life out of now. So it's not as clear where the hole is to plug in, but it does feel like they're at least a bat short.
That's the tough part, because the Mets have their own internal metrics. I took what I took away from the conversation with David Stearns the other day in San Francisco was that, the metrics were showing him something that we are not privy to, or that we don't have in the public metrics. But he also did, I kind of wondered if he maybe said this as a challenge. He said, I don't think we need another bat. I wouldn't I'm obviously open to a lot of different possibilities and looking into possibilities. I've grown to be, he said he's grown to be comfortable with the length of the lineup, but he said these guys need to figure out how to start scoring runs soon, and they know that. I don't know if that was necessarily like a challenge to his team or not. He's not wrong. They do need to start figuring out how to drive in some runs. They are addressing these things sort of individually. Jeremy Barnes has put together plans for them. It's sort of based on pitching matchups. It's based on who each individual hitter is. The Mets like to do things, tailor things individually to strengths when it comes to really offense, defense, and pitching. It's not like one blanket philosophy. It is, what are your strengths? We're going to work with that.